Conservatives are not the headline story, and I suppose many in the party will be relieved at that. But third in a national poll, there is a lot to chew over, isn't there?
Absolutely. I don't think anyone can viably or credibly pretend that this was a fantastic weekend for the Conservatives. We've never come third in a national poll in our history before. We've lost some really good MEPs, including our leader in Brussels. And we've lost councillors across the country. That's a really serious matter. It could have been an awful lot worse, and David Cameron's fortunate in that, I think.
Give me a sense of what the grassroots are feeling.
Well, there's conflicting feelings. Firstly, I think there's some joy to see the Liberal Democrats, who particularly on the ground around the country are disliked by anyone who's campaigned against them, because they're not known to be an incredibly trustworthy grassroots. So it is nice for a lot of Tories to see a bit of comeuppance, shall we say. But also there's concern. A lot of Tories know people who've left, who are decent people who've gone to UKIP and are now supporting that party. There's some frustration that our leadership has helped to create this monster and is now failing to deal with it.
We heard the Prime Minister there, in effect he's saying no to any sort of referendum being brought forward, no to any sort of pact. In what sense is it a dangerous message of more of the same?
Well, we've got to be clear, there's no silver bullet to dealing with UKIP. A lot of this is a question of a loss of trust in Westminster, loss of trust in our party on behalf of people who want to leave the EU. You can't get that back overnight. It needs to be.
But you've got to get those voters back to win in 2015.
Absolutely, and I think there are positive messages, like the simple fact is the Conservative Party are the only ones that can deliver an in-out referendum. I would like to leave the EU. That's why I'm voting Conservative in 2015. There are also negative messages. If you vote UKIP, you're more likely to get Ed Miliband. And the polling from Lord Ashcroft over the weekend suggests that's quite compelling.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because those reports, heavily reported over the weekend, he is extensively polled in those Labour-Tory marginals. Labour have double-digit leads. There will be a lot of backbenchers still, after these results, quite nervy.
Yes, and I think we'll see a lot of people poring over the details of exactly which council areas and wards and constituencies turned UKIP in the European elections as well. If you live by the seaside and you're a Conservative MP, you have a large working class population, a lot of people will be feeling somewhat twitchy.
Three things that Conservatives need to do differently in these 350 days before the 2015 election.
If there's going to be a renegotiation strategy, it needs to be tough, it needs to be clear. So far we've heard very little. Secondly, I think we do actually need to recognise that individual voters are not wrong or right to be voting UKIP. We may disagree with the party, we can't talk down to people. And thirdly, we need to get on with getting the economy right. That's the thing which ultimately is continuing to turn voters towards the Conservatives and has blunted the big threat, which is Ed Miliband.
OK, Mark Wallace, thanks for your time. Thanks for standing here in the rain. You escaped it. Thanks very much for your time. Well, that's